Okay, and we're back and we're ready to start glossing. Like I said, I've got my t-shirt rags here, got my nice quality polyfoam brush here, nice and springy. This one's I think a 2-inch wide, that's about what you want. It's got a nice point that remains pointy, so in case you got to get into spots, it's okay. And you've got the tuna tin or the shrimp tin full of Armor Seal. One thing about Armor Seal is it's very thin, which is why you're going to do it in 3 coats. So they tell you that you can use a polyfoam brush or you can use a t-shirt and just hand rub it on. I always abide by the brush because one, for some reason the t-shirt tends to not do it as well. I've just had really bad experiences with that. I've tried it and it doesn't pan out as well. I'm sure you can do it, but it's a little less wasteful. But again, if you're going through the process of this, and you've only seen, you know, in the videos, you've probably seen about an hour's worth of work total. And I've been doing work on the back end of this to get the rest of the pieces done. So you know how much time you're putting into this thing. You might as well spend the extra 75 cents and do it well, because you're going to throw this out after you're done. I am going to start with a leg just because it's the easiest thing for you to be able to see. Now, Armor Seal, again, is very thin, and you don't need a whole lot of it. So you're just going to kind of slide that there. You just want to get the littlest tip right to about the edge of where the tip starts to come in, and you just want to very lightly brush it on there. The thing about the foam is that it will not leave brush marks, which is why you want to use the foam thing. So don't try to get like a regular brush, like a paint brush, and do this. Also, you want to keep an eye on how much of it is going on, because with these spindles, they're going to have to stand up. Usually what happens is if you look behind me, there's like a table and there's a refrigerator and stuff. Usually I prop them up against there once I'm done going through one of these things. When I'm done here, actually, what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to take these pieces back down to the basement. It's still a little cold in the garage, and temperature, humidity, those things all mess with your ability to stain things well and your ability to use this top coat effectively. So I'm just kind of running this thing in here and there and everywhere just to try to get into these spots. You can always kind of tell if you're getting it right because you just keep rotating the spindle, kind of keep touching into those areas there. And again, just like with the stain, you're going to double check and triple check this thing. Now, once I started getting this thing wet, I noticed a couple of things that are happening. One is that it's still dry, but there's still a little excess stain on there. What you don't want to do, if you start to notice that your tip is getting a little colored out, which is what mine is, I'm going to lean that there so you can see it. This is also why you want the little thing. So there's a little bit of brown kind of tipping in on my brush. You can kind of see it there. You don't want to dunk this back into there because then all of a sudden you're getting contaminated stuff happening in your thing of Armor Seal, and then it's for shit. Sorry, it's bad. So what I do is I keep a rag nearby and I just kind of tamp it out so you can see that dark brown coming out of there. It's not a big deal, it's not going to affect the color, but you just don't want that going back in there. So I just kind of grab that rag and kind of tamp that out. So now I got a nice clean brush. I'll do a second dip in here and then start working the leg again. Really I've made a lot of mistakes when it came to doing stuff. I used to do straight out of the quart for this and for what they call rock hard, which is a tabletop varnish. I use it on, like I said, on desks, on dining room tables, on kitchen tables, basically anything that's going to get a lot of heavy use, a lot of hot and cold plates and stuff like that, because it holds up really well. But I was using it right out of the can. So what was happening is I was dragging contaminants right back into that can, and I was ruining, you know, $20, $30 worth of gloss or worth of varnish by doing that. Also, if you sand varnish, not this stuff, but if you sand the varnish too early in between coats, it creates what they call boogers. It literally looks like boogers. And those boogers will get back into the mix and it's a mess and you can't do anything with it. I've thrown out, I think I threw out like 2 quarts of different types of varnish and stuff because I was just doing dumb things. And that's when I started discovering the tuna cans thing. So I was using ramekins, and I didn't like the way they worked. Plus, I needed the ramekins to hold the Jasco stripper. And so instead what I did is I started asking people for tuna cans. So we're Catholic. During Lent we eat a lot of tuna. My mother eats a lot of shrimp salad. I get a lot of cans from them. So again, works nicely. Also, then again, watch we flip this so that we can see the underside. And yep, I'm missing some of the under points here, as you can kind of see. So you want to make sure you're getting that nice and done. Also, when you're kind of through with any particular piece, especially one that's going to be standing up, stuff that lays flat like that tabletop, which we'll get to in the next video, you don't worry too much about getting too much on. It's not great, but it's also not the worst thing in the world. However, spindles or anything else that has to be, you know, kind of stood up, you want to make absolutely certain that you don't put too much on, because then you start to get the drips. Drips aren't great. You can take care of them. I usually try to take the side edge here, and I just try to kind of go over, you know, some of these spots where I think some drips might occur. I can kind of see while I'm looking at it, it's a little wetter in some spots, or it looks a little shinier. So I try to, you know, get in there and get those out of there. But if it drips between the first coat and the second coat, or the second coat and the third coat, it's not the end of the world, but you definitely don't want any drips once you get to your third coat. One other thing that you just saw me do is I held it up and I started looking at it in the light a little bit. That's something where you'll notice dry spots. So you also notice little kind of bubbles of stuff sometimes. So I like to hold it up and kind of look around and try to give it the old eyeball test here to see if I missed anything, or little bubbles in there, and then just try to make sure that it's nice and, you know, as finished as it can be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lean this over here next to the fridge, just put that down, lean it flat, make sure that that stays. And we're going to end this one here because it's going to get too long otherwise. But once we get back together for the next one, we're going to do the two flat pieces. I'm going to show you how to do the edge. I'm going to show you what this should look like and how to get into those crevices.